Deadpan Ghosts is a horror media podcast and, as such, may feature discussion of mature or disturbing subject matter. A full list of content warnings for this episode can be found in the description. Hey, welcome to Deadpan Ghosts, a podcast about horror media, hosted by two ghoulish goofs, Vernon and their sorrowful co-host, Jonathan. And today we are talking about a film from 1982 called Poltergeist. Vernon, what did you think of this movie?
Wow. Thank you, Jonathan. The first thing I have here written in my mental notes is the word America.
Yes.
This movie I have never seen before.
Right.
I went through my entire life, and then most of my afterlife, obviously every bit of it until today, without seeing this famous Steven Spielberg produced and written movie. And it opens with an extended America theme song.
Yes.
I don't know the title of the song.
It's the Star Spangled Banner, I think, is the one. I could be wrong. It's very America focused right from the start.
Right. The setting is like small town or new town, fresh town, freshly put into a location town where all the houses are the same.
Right. It's very 1980s kind of Reaganomics going on, massive expansion in these big houses.
The dad is like a realtor?
Yes.
A realtor?
Mm-hmm. Craig T. Nelson. He is a realtor, and he is a rep for a realty agency, I believe, to be more specific. There's something going on there where he hasn't gotten his full due. They talk about he should have gotten a promotion by now later in the film. So he's actually middle class and living in this giant mansion, right? It's not literally a mansion, but to most people today, these homes are ostentatious, very rooted in the decade that this film was made in.
Absolutely. My point of view of this movie is very specific. It's hard to separate it from the facts, which is that I read the book in preparation for this.
That's right.
The people we're haunting are pretty superstitious, and they leave out a ghost book. That's like a book that every time you're passing through the house, you flip a page so that the ghosts that are haunting you can
read,
move on to the next page.
Mm-hmm. It's a really nice thing to do.
The novelization of Poltergeist, the 1982 film. The novelization written by James Caan, not the actor James Caan, different person.
Oh, okay.
But so I have not seen the movie though. The whole time my lens was like a person who had read the book first, and it was really a hard lens to get out of until about halfway through the movie.
Which is where you have stopped reading the book.
Well, just like the people we're haunting, I'm also pretty superstitious, and when I got to page 83 of this 183-paged book, on the page they turned the TV to channel 83, and then I looked at the clock in real life, and it was 11:38, which is obviously the only time where those numbers could come up.
Yeah.
Needless to say, the book shut itself.
Interesting.
Out of nowhere.
Wow.
So I made a note in my brain. I read up until 56 minutes into the movie, so like halfway through the movie. And the experiences were very different. I think that I'm happy that I let the movie have its ending, independently. I'm glad I didn't have an image of the things that were in the finale of this movie. For people who haven't seen it, I don't know if we're going to spoil everything right away. I think maybe we'll try to start near the beginning. This movie is about a family, a family of Steve and Diane, and their oldest daughter Dana, and their son Robbie, and their daughter Carol Ann.
Wow,
That's all I
you
know.
got
What do
down
you
all the
know?
names
Well, having read the book, I totally did get down all the
for
names, and I
sure,
know
for
even
sure.
like the scientists' names, which the movie fails to get across.
Yeah,
I would
certainly.
say,
Well, some of them,
uh,
they say their names a couple of times, but I think one of them only
right,
gets his name said once, and that's
for
really
sure.
funny.
There's a Ryan. One of them, its name is
Uh
Ryan.
huh.
Um,
Yeah. You want to talk about the cast? We got Jo Beth Williams here as the mom. Diane. We've got
Absolutely, the mom was fantastic.
yeah, she gets lead billing, which I thought was great.
Wow.
You know.
Yeah, it is a super surprising performance, full throttle, the whole time.
Yeah, she's very emotional. She has a lot to deal with in this movie. We have Craig T. Nelson playing Steve, the dad. We talked about him, and a couple of interesting actors playing the kids. But most importantly, we have Heather O'Rourke playing Carol Ann. Um, she is really like lightning in a bottle in this movie for like a child actor, as far as I'm concerned. And Oliver Robbins, who plays her brother Robbie, is also really, really good. Um, Something about the '80s, they found these really good kids for movies like this. Dominique
Yeah.
Dunn, who plays Dana, she doesn't have as much, but the stuff she does have is really good.
If you mean really weird stuff, like
Well,
out of the few scenes she has, there's like the guys digging the pool out back
for
who
sure.
harass her.
Yeah, so early in this movie, a scene that I commonly forget about, honestly, there's a scene where there's some construction workers outside, and they're totally catcalling her, and she's supposed to be 16 in the movie. I don't know how old the actress was, but she looks about that age. And uh, I don't really know why it's in the film. It doesn't really
Yeah.
add anything, and even the mom, she's kind of like watching it go on, and I guess Dana like flips them off, and they don't take it any further. So I guess she just feels like, oh, she can take care of herself. She just kind of chuckles.
Yeah, the mom does not is not aghast at that moment. One of my notes is that the mom immediately yells at the dog instead of
Right, instead of those
yelling at these
guys.
men.
That's funny. So, do you, since we've gotten a little bit into it, do you want to kind of summarize um, the narrative here?
Uh, I mean, yes, absolutely. In an extremely long formed, winded way, I'm
Oh,
sure.
okay. Well, because
We open.
oh, I want to say first off that I have seen this movie many times. I'm sure have let that slip a little bit, but you have just seen this movie for the first time, so I'm really interested in how you're gonna put this. All right.
Right. I think to harness the energy that seeing this for the first time has given me, that to withhold total spoilers until the end and try to orchestrate, my dictation of the events is not honest to my experience, and really the ending of this movie and the spectacle that occurs in not even the third act. This movie has a classic horror element where they kind of wrap things up, so you feel,
Yeah.
and then it does a double third act, a double ending, which I was all there for. I was really excited. I wanted to know where this thing was going. Having read the book gradually over a week, it was it was a thrill to finally, you know, I don't know, receive the fake out ending, and then the double ending was really satisfying, I thought.
Yeah, that's good to hear.
I was like, wow. I was, and the thematically, like, keeping it was about the parents coping with the loss, the possible loss of a child. I'm glad it wasn't like a Boy Who Cried Wolf plot where the parents didn't believe the kid. Like, very quickly,
Right.
everybody's on board.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, something is happening.
Yeah, it's like one scene for the mom to convince the dad that something is going on. And she's like, I need you to have
Exactly.
an open mind. And he does.
Oh, she says the greatest line. I written it down because I wanted to say it to you. It was, reach back into your past when you had an open mind. She said it better than I did because my chicken scratch handwriting in my brain because I'm a ghost is
Oh,
terrible.
that's okay. Yeah, but that is a great line.
Yeah, the parents were really great, and in the finale, when the stakes are as high as they can be, and they're trying to save their kid and their family, and they kiss and they embrace, and there's like a rope wrapped around the mom. It's like
Yeah.
it's the biggest moment. I cried. I totally I made a note. I
Oh
said
wow.
that I cried ghost tears,
Yeah,
and so I think the movie hit the level that it needed to, um, as far as I'm concerned.
for
It,
sure.
it did it. So
That's so great to hear. I actually also cried a little bit during the movie, which was great. I didn't expect it to hit me. It was actually in an earlier scene. It's
tell me.
it's the scene where they first have the paranormal investigator over Dr. Lesh, played by Beatrice
Yeah.
Straight. She's fantastic. She's so
Oh yeah.
phenomenal.
She's great. Her monologue about ghosts and death, I mean, it really, really connected to me on
Every level.
legitimate levels.
Yeah, it's so good. Uh, but when she's there and they're trying to contact Carol Ann through the television for the first time, that
Mm-hmm.
scene actually really got to me. I teared up a little bit.
Yeah.
I cried ectoplasmic ghost tears all over the place too. So
Yeah, I think that that the actors were doing a lot. Surprisingly, the book provided a lot of that emotionality. However, most of the dialogue was different. I'll talk about that a little later, but surprisingly, the book was a whole different pass, a whole different attempt at all of the scenes.
yeah,
And but the actors in their eyes, did Dr. Lesh and the mom. I mean, Craig T. Robinson for a portion of the movie has dramatic, like stage makeup, dark circles under his eyes, and I didn't like that. I thought that the mom should have them too, or neither of them should have them. Like
right.
it doesn't look.
It's
And yeah, I don't
and
know.
you say stage makeup, yeah, like it looked cheap, like not film makeup, but like stage makeup.
Like they applied it in between scenes
Yes,
because it's a live production.
something
It did feel like that.
something that's not supposed to be seen close up, perhaps. And there are some effects in this movie that have definitely aged for the worse. Some things that look kind of comical now. What do you think about some of that?
Well, yeah, I would say that the fear that came about in the reading of the book, like I was able to hold on to that
Yeah,
for the entire reading experience, and then up to watching the movie, up until the first moment that a hand 2D animated
right.
ghost hand comes out of the TV, and I'm like, oh.
Well, I
And but that's not the case for all of the
no,
effects.
no.
And so later in the movie, I think the puppetry effects and those
Hmm.
things should have been all that there was.
Yeah, like
I
the
could have
big
worked
the
around.
big head that comes out.
Oh my
I love
gosh! I
a
mean, that stuff is.
killer.
I'm glad I didn't read that stuff.
Yeah.
It was killer. Um, when the head was, yeah, that was. I was often going like, oh, the whole often,
It's
which was
honestly
crazy.
such a ride. It has quiet moments, like any good horror movie should, but
Well,
when
I
it
don't think I would describe any of this movie as quiet, Jonathan. That's going to be the segue I take into talking about the sound sensitive
yes.
nature of this movie as a ghost, but as a person before I became a ghost, I was extremely sound sensitive,
Hmm.
and ghosts are apparently plagued with being more sound sensitive. And so this movie immediately first scene is like the dog is going from room to room,
That's right.
making dog noises
Yeah, you don't
and
like
eating
that.
food. The dog, as soon as I read it in the book, I knew that this dog was going to be a noise problem.
Hmm.
Another, like this, I'm sure this movie comes with a strobe warning, like photosensitive viewers may experience a seizure warning
Yeah.
because there's extended scenes where the TV is flashing. Looking at the static is not so bad. Even the sound of the static wasn't like the worst thing in the world, but the flashing wasn't too much for sure.
I didn't get any kind of warning like that.
No, me neither.
Yeah.
It should have. I don't know if you could pull it off in like if you remade the movie today. I don't think you would have that flashing.
Yeah, probably
Um,
not.
the last thing I'll say about I did keep a tally of all the eating because that's just the type of ghost I am,
Hmm.
and of all the Star Wars references. There was an inordinate amount of Star Wars
Right.
merchandise
Well,
in the little kids' room.
that whole room is covered with late 70s and 80s stuff. Like there's a Bernie and and what am I fucking saying? An Ernie and Bert poster. Bernie. Go Bernie.
Uh,
An Alien poster. Fucking crazily enough, I don't think that kid should be watching Alien. Either of those kids in that room. Hopefully they haven't seen it, but sometimes a little kid's gonna just go for the cool thing, I guess, when it's rated R, especially. But it's just so much Star Wars stuff. You're right, like all over the place.
the last thing I'll say about the sound is the music, which I
Mm,
think for a portion of it was kind of rollicking, generic '80s kids movie music, but the horror, like the ghost theme song, was squealing strings. You
yeah.
know, I thought it was generic and trash. You
Well,
know, as the people.
it's certainly not the type of thing that's gonna appeal to you, since you are a sound sensitive
No, I
ghost.
know. I don't want to spend any more time on
No,
it,
it's okay,
but I certainly couldn't recommend this movie to any other ghosts that are like me.
for sure.
Uh,
I will say that the soundtrack is. I don't think it's generic the whole way through. There are some moments here and there, but certainly the main theme at this point is considered at least a little iconic. I don't know where you'd rank it as far as horror movie themes go, but it's got uh, it's got a quality to it that is eerie and kind of sing-songy and like a lullaby kind of way, you know.
hmm. I would have to hear it isolated to see if it really stood out
Well,
while
if it
watching.
was hard on you the first time, you don't have to do
Oh
that,
yeah,
but
I don't feel it's like I don't feel like I would ever want to watch this movie again.
just because it was very very
Well,
rough on your
yeah,
ears.
it's an unpleasant experience the whole time, not just for sound. It's an unpleasant movie. It's about tension and about the release of that, and you get the experience once.
Yeah, a part
And
of
I don't think I would want to watch it
I gotcha.
again.
A part of the interesting thing for this podcast is that you are not such a big horror person, whereas I am, uh, you know, more of a horror fan. Not that you haven't seen horror films because you do have your favorites, uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I've just seen a lot of them, and this is one of those times where I've seen the movie, you haven't, and because your interests they tend to shift more towards positive vibes and positive
Yeah.
soundscapes, more importantly.
Well, that is why I did respond so well to the family dynamic
Yes,
and the big kiss at the I don't know, it was like heck yes,
it's
2 thumbs up.
an 80s movie all the way through. It's really about the love, every member of the family, the love that they have for each other, and it's about death. You know, it's about some heavy things, but kind of certainly boiled down enough so that a kid can understand it.
Absolutely. I mean, the beginning of the movie starts with the pet bird dying. And so we get exactly what you said, boiling it all down for a kid.
Yeah.
The mom has to walk Carol Ann through the burial of this bird.
After Carol Ann catches her about to flush it down the toilet, which was really a really
Right.
funny take.
Yeah, yeah. The kid is great. Um the in the book I think the kids were written really amazingly, and the scene of like the fear of the thunder with the dad coming in at night and telling what all parents told their kids about the counting uh, between the lightning flash and the thunder
For
sound,
sure.
was really good. The right before that thunder scene, um, the the son Robbie, he's like hanging out in the tree, and the mom and Carol Ann are burying the bird, and he's like, can we like dig it up later and look at its bones?
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, wait, that was not a line from the book. I know the book was written after, but I was like, what? And so they cut to this scene where I was supposed to have sympathy for this kid in his room, fearful, and I was like, I remember having so much sympathy when I read the book, but I think he's a punk that needs to get
Oh,
scared.
he's a little
It
kid.
affected the scene.
He's a little
I
kid. But
know.
little boys think bones are cool, you know. I guess he's being a little insensitive towards his sister, right? He's being a
Right.
little
And that's
insensitive.
good.
I suppose so. They are fighting. They're a little fighty later on, you know, they fight over toys and stuff. When kids are close in age, I guess they do stuff like that, but yeah, he should be nicer to his sister. I will say right after that, she is completely over it. Like after the burial process, she's like, "Can I get a goldfish now?" And it cut to a shot of her
Yeah.
with two goldfish.
The I hate to keep going back to the novelization, but it's all I have, okay?
No, I think it's a cool.
And the goldfish was not in there. That line where she's like, "Can we get a goldfish?" was cut. I think that the book was going for a more serious tone.
For
It
sure.
had cursing. The parents were yelling at the spirit like
Right. You told you
with curse
you
words.
let slip.
That's the one thing I
Yeah, you
said.
let
That's the one
slip
thing I said.
before we watched this together that the book.
I asked, "What is it rated?"
I said PG, which is true
Oh.
because I'm pretty sure PG-13 didn't exist yet. Let me take a look.
Let's do a Google. Because certainly there's a scene in which one of these paranormal investigators
It is rated.
show up to the house.
Sorry, it is rated PG, by the way.
One of the paranormal investigators has a hallucination scene, which your brain tells you, oh, this has to be a hallucination because it's the most horrifying thing in the movie.
Yeah,
There's a couple bits in the movie that I feel like were the subject of editing in to make it a PG movie.
for
There's
sure.
a bit where one of the other paranormal people, I can see his lips saying an F word, and in that moment I was like,
Yeah,
maybe there was some ADR changes. Maybe those parents did say some F
for
words,
sure. Maybe in the original script, even.
right? Which is
Yeah,
what the book would be written off of.
but Steven Spielberg is here, and so it becomes kind of a part of that, you know, his production line of family movies. It is a horror movie,
Right.
but it's a family movie first, maybe.
It used his font. It was like the Steven Spielberg
Yeah.
opening credits font.
And we should talk a little bit about the director of this movie, Toby Hooper, who got his start in the horror industry by directing a famous little movie called The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh man, I have seen that.
Yeah, and I have
Ugh.
not, so that will be a fun one.
What?
What? That will be
I
a
know
fun
I'm
one.
lying. I knew
Yeah, I
that. We
know.
just talked about that.
For a future episode, we've got it planned down the line. But you know, that movie is very frightening, and there's actually not a whole lot of gore in the film, from what I understand. But it just has like a terrorizing kind of effect. It's R-rated, right?
I couldn't say. I don't
I'm
know.
pretty sure it is. Uh, it was banned in a couple of different countries. Uh, I forget which ones off the top of my head, but seeing Toby Hooper direct something like this is probably interesting for you. How would you say it compares?
Um, this was definitely before Texas Chainsaw Massacre,
No way.
right?
No. 1982. Texas Chainsaw Massacre was in the 70s.
Oh, I don't know nothing. Well, that is
Yeah, I
interesting.
know all about it, but I just haven't seen it. Is the funny part.
Yeah, it lulls you. I think like I said, the first ghost that you see being a hand animated white
For
ghost
sure.
is totally gets you into like a different mental space. And
Yeah.
Carol Ann isn't taking it too seriously. She's like, "Can we get pizza?
Mm.
Like, are we done yet?" Like, she's told to play it bored a couple times even.
Yeah, the scares ramp
Um,
up. I mean, we talked about how uh, Diane. Let me pull the names back up here. Hang on. We
you have
talked
Steve and
Steve and
Diane,
Diane. We talked about
Dana.
how Steve and Diane they both believe pretty quick that there's something going on here, but they're also kind of like excited and amazed by it because one thing it is like poltergeist activity, just things moving around and nothing too serious so far. You know, some chairs are pulled out, and then she chides. Diane chides Carol Ann. She's like, "Oh, I told you guys not to pull the chairs out." And then she turns around, and all the chairs are stacked in a really neat and cool way, all of a sudden, on top of the table. And it's like startling, but it's not threatening yet, you know? So
Yeah,
there
that
is,
was one of those shots that's like a really long shot where you pan away from the table and chairs and you pan back and something's different. This movie had a lot of really impressive long takes
yeah,
of performance, not just like scene changing spectacle. I thought that the parents in their bedroom had a really long take, and then one of the scenes at the end where they're being told by the person, I'm sorry, to like yell. It was lots of really great performances in really long takes.
for sure. Yeah, I do love a lot of the framing and just the way that the actors are directed and everything's performed. You're right. It does lull you, and that's it. Really gets flipped on its head when shit starts getting real really quick in this movie.
Yeah, I mean, the if you looked at it on the people we are haunting watched it on Max, and so the little blurb said like a girl gets taken.
Mm-hmm.
They're trying to save their daughter, and that's what the first act of this movie accomplishes, is that Carol Ann is absorbed into the TV maybe, or into the closet maybe, like you don't really know. She disappears, and we immediately go to a paranormal trio of investigators, an older woman and two dudes, and they come into the house and ask a bunch of questions so we can get a bunch of explanations.
Yeah, these characters are Dr. Lesh and Ryan, played by Richard Lawson, and we've got Marty, played by Martin Casella. Hope I'm saying that right. Casella or Casella?
I think it is pronounced Marty.
For sure.
Um,
But they're Marty is the guy who has the hallucination. He starts pulling pieces of his face off, and so after that happens, he leaves, and Dr. Lesh is like, he won't be coming back, which is really funny.
yeah, that was good.
But she also
That was
tells Diane, "I will be coming back," which is nice.
yeah.
Uh,
There was a lot of really good moments of laughter, but also moments of sincerity.
yeah,
It was
they're
it was
like
good.
kind of trying to figure out if this is a hoax, but it's all pretty much like out the window. Like they're all pretty fucking convinced, and then at a certain point, they're like, "This is real." So that all
Well,
happens very fast as well, and kind of behind the scenes. Uh,
as a reader of the book who did not finish the book, I was still in that kind of limbo period of
mm,
I think that this could be a hoax. Like
for sure.
maybe something, I don't know, but at before the like 30-minute mark, I wrote on my mental notes, is this Native American burial ground?
Yes, that's right.
Then halfway through the movie, like I wrote another, it was an hour and 13 minutes, we get this big reveal of the cemetery.
That's right.
And I think I was, the reason I thought that it would be a Native American burial ground is because of the houses, the setting, these newly put neighborhoods and all these new areas. Like the dad is listing off the new, like we're in lot one, and then we're in number five or something. I don't know, but the big reveal comes that we've been digging up graveyards.
Right. So there's a lot of like talk from these parapsychologists, as they call themselves, real cute, and they there's a lot of talk from them about this could be poltergeists, which they're usually uh, attached to a person, and that usually lasts from like a few weeks to a few months, and then it can all just stop. But this could be a haunting, which would mean that the whole place is haunted, and that could last for years and years. So, and
Yeah, that was one of my favorite parts of the whole
for sure, and
movie
you and I know,
because it really spoke to me. I was like,
yeah,
I feel more connected to the house I'm haunting. I'm not, it was
exactly.
it was really like speaking my, I felt like I was reading,
Written for the ghosts.
yeah, it was really written for the ghosts out there.
That's right.
Yeah, there was a lots of stuff for the ghosts. There were on the
Oh
TV. There
yeah.
was like they would show movies, and there were people being like, either I'm dead or I'm crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like people are. There was always
Oh,
little background stuff. I wrote that
I would
down.
love to find what that was actually.
Yeah, they were like, are we dead? Is it real? These two guys kind of coming to terms with being possibly dead on the TV, and I was like, this is speaking my language.
That's right. Oh, I can't find it, but that's okay. It was some cool shit with the TV. This whole movie has a nostalgia thing going on for it, but it's also entrenched in 80s like merchandise. So it's also got that going on. We have our own
Right.
nostalgia for the movie. Everything in it.
The opening has the America, like the Star Spangled Banner, but I think halfway through I put the pieces together that
Right.
at one point in time in the 80s, when a channel went off the air at the end of the night, they signed off with an extent with they played the Star Spangled the national anthem,
Exactly.
and then it went to static. And I think that
That's
early in the movie I forgot this fact that I must have learned at one point,
right.
but then you realize, what it was. Maybe
That's
you don't
yeah, that's
realize.
crazy to us. We've been spirits for a long time, and now TV is just on all the time. There's no static,
Right.
unless the
Uh,
cable's out or the satellite
I
dish.
imagine that people much younger than, uh, me, just wouldn't know that reference,
That's right.
and they would just be like America. But it is about the
Yeah,
the American dream and this house and putting this house on, where do you build it and where did America build its,
what is that?
what are the roots?
What is the legacy built on? And for it to be made in the '80s, which is a time of American supremacy, at least that was the thought at the time, right? Is that we're the best country in the world. We're all so well off. The economy is so good and booming because of Reagan. At one point in the movie, Craig T. Nelson has got cracked open Reagan's book, The Man and the President, which is
Yeah,
absolutely wild. And of course,
but he's rolling a joint at the same
and
time,
rolling
so
a
I think
joint at the
that
same
that's
time. Yeah, they're doing these white parents who live in an upscale house in this neighborhood are getting away with doing illegal drugs, right? Drugs that Reagan was, by the way, flooding the streets with. Most of that was cocaine, but I'm sure that he flooded some weed too. I'm not sure what drugs were or were not in Reagan's interest, but he flooded inner city streets with drugs. That's well known. Meanwhile, um, harsh sentences for drug offenders, even people who are just, doing them, yada yada yada. But they're getting away with it. They don't have any problems. They're in this nice
right.
neighborhood, and
But this movie isn't a period piece.
it's
It's like a
in
modern
yeah,
day
it's
movie.
in the time period. So it's interesting to see that. There is certainly some behind the scenes delving into the modern culture going on, right?
Yeah, but it doesn't turn out to be Native American.
No, I
It's
think it
just
does
they make it
because
clear that
no,
it's
he
all the
says
bodies at the end are
not
Americans.
all
And
of
they all
them.
have watches and they're all rich
Not all
people.
of them. There is one white
There's
haired
one, the
skeleton.
big. Okay, so that is the main ghost that comes down the stairs with all the light. They get it on camera.
Maybe so, yeah.
I think so.
It's a little confusing because
It is confusing.
Craig T. Nelson meets with his boss, this guy on the board, right? And he is played by an actor we've probably both seen before. Um,
Yeah, he's got good actor
is it
face.
Mr. Teague, played by James Karen? His face is
Hmm.
really young. He's got a really young picture on the IMDb. He must have been an actor in classic Hollywood movies. I'm
Yeah,
lucky that the people we're haunting left this all open for me. In any case,
for sure. They're really invested. I think they're getting suspicious.
well, at least they're polite. They want to make sure we're entertained. Uh,
Okay, halfway through the movie, they introduce Tangina,
that's right,
the
Tangina.
psychic. Psychic was the word I couldn't find earlier. She's the one asking the parents to yell for Carol Ann. Um,
Yeah.
in the book, she is introduced so early.
Oh, really? That's interesting.
Yeah, we basically chapter uh in like the spiel for the book at the beginning of the book, the blurb, whatever you call it. They he talks about how 50% of the book was like additional material. The novelization had to be written in like 2 months in
Mm,
Steven Spielberg's office
what?
before the release of the movie. And he wrote it with Steven Spielberg. And at
Okay.
the time, Steven said that this is the greatest novelization that's ever been written. And this guy went on to write the novelizations for like Empire Strikes Back and some other stuff. I'm sure he's responsible for a lot of the Star Wars extended universe because of that fact.
Wow.
Um,
That's really cool. Well, good for him.
but he put a lot of research into ESP, and the whole like chapter 3 is this big not an autobiography. I don't know what words mean, but it's a retelling of Tangina's whole life and her childhood and dealing with her powers.
That's
And
crazy.
I specifically took some, I thought Jonathan would like this. Why isn't Jonathan walking through this room and reading this book one page at a
Well,
time
I
like
left
me?
it to you. I thought that it would make for
I
a
know it
more
was
interesting cast if you read it. I
very
did not.
interesting. But Tangina was so like there's this whole scene where she meets Dr. Lesh and they're running tests on her, and during the test where she's all strapped up and she's sleeping and she like sees Carol Ann and she's communicating with her, and she's like Carol Ann's voice is coming out of Tangina and she's saying mommy, and she's running from these spirits and Tangina names them,
Mm-hmm.
and they're like and they give them names,
Wow. There's no
and
names for the there's
there's
spirits in this movie. Kind of sad.
no uh and then Tangina like she can sense where Carol Ann is, and they're like they hook her up to this thing and they're seeing how the readings go up and down, and that points them in the direction, and they're driving around the neighborhood, and they like Tangina's brain signals lead them to Carol Ann, and they knock on the door, and the parents are exhausted together, and that's how the paranormal people meet the family. The family does not go to their office ever.
Right. Yeah, it's
It was
interesting
whack.
how the movie does it. They kind of just like hire these people, and they're like, we haven't talked to the cops, we haven't talked to anybody, because their girl just disappears, right? And
I mean, it makes a lot of sense in the movie for them to go to some specialist.
for
For
sure.
in the book, for Tangina's psychic powers to lead them to the house,
Well, it
it was whack.
maybe so, but you get kind of a sense of Tangina's psychic powers a little bit in the movie. I think it's funny the way they do it. Basically, like Craig T. Nelson doesn't believe, he thinks, oh, this lady's not really hot shit, and he's like, Oh, I know what to do. Whenever she asks me a question, I'll try to think it with my mind. And so he does. She comes out and she's like, I'm addressing the living. And so they give her the answer, but they're like, what's wrong with you? His wife, Diane, and Dr. Tesh. I'm sorry, Dr. Lesh. uh, but he's like, see, I was thinking with my mind, and she couldn't hear me. I thought you said this lady was a powerful clairvoyant. And she comes back out. It's framed where she's like high up on the staircase, which is a really important staircase in this movie. It's like most of the important scenes take place around this staircase. But she's like, I am a powerful clairvoyant, Mr. Mr. Freeling. I just don't like what is it she says exactly? She says
Oh man,
I just don't
I don't
like
like trick
trick
answers.
answers. Which I
Yeah,
have heard of trick questions, but I never heard of trick answers before, so that's pretty funny.
yeah, I loved her. Um,
She's fantastic. That lady is Zelda Rubinstein, and I hope I'm saying that right. Rubenstein, who played Tangina, and God, her stature, her voice, it's a legendary performance, and you know, it, it winds up in other movies sometimes. People
yeah,
reference it, quote
I
it.
Jim Carrey
That's
did
right.
a. He said this house is clean
Hmm.
in I think Ace Ventura
Yeah,
or
he
something.
says,
And I
"I have exorcised the demons.
right.
This house is
He
clean,"
also
and
yeah.
it's funny because she does not say that,
No, she doesn't say the first part. No.
uh, and I always kind of remember her as saying it, but that's just Jim Carrey imposing his version onto my mind, right? She just goes,
Another
she rolls her head, like she does a little nod, and she's like, "This house is clear." She's out of
oh
there.
yeah, such a and she's doing it for the camera too. Ryan is pointing the camera at her and she's like
This
she's
house is clear.
oh man.
It's
It was good. It was a killer moment.
pretty good.
Another moment that I had like I realized was something I had seen before was like the end of the movie, the house like
Mm,
collapsing in on
I
itself.
love that
The
part.
end of the first Simpsons Treehouse of Horror uh ends like that.
That's good. Yeah. There's this movie's been done to death. Family Guy,
Yeah, The Simpsons did it first,
Simpsons always does it
unfortunately.
first, but Family Guy's done parodies. Not to prop up that terrible show too much, but I remember seeing the guy pulling his face off in the mirror. Uh,
Mm,
Actually, it's Peter
mm-mm.
pulling his face off in the mirror, and then he pulls it off, and he's Hank Hill under there, and he's like, "Ha, propane." Um, so crazy,
Terrible,
terrible,
terrible.
right? Terrible.
But that scene was incredibly impactful, and it went on for a long time. I think the blood and guts does get I mean, there's a lot of goo in the
There's a
finale.
lot of goo. That's the bloodiest scene, though, is the face tearing off. If it had been in any worse than that, it would have gotten an R rating.
Yeah. It felt like this movie came out in '82. I think Ghostbusters came out in '84. It
Hmm.
does feel like Ghostbusters is nearly a spoof, or
Yeah, it's a
or
comedy. I wouldn't say it's a spoof, but it is a
yeah,
comedy.
it's not right. It's like it saw it and it wanted to do the paranormal investigator side even more.
For sure, that could be,
You know,
the paranormal investigator stuff is really interesting. They really do their due diligence. They want to make sure they're not getting hoaxed. Uh, and we really like them. We like the paranormal investigators. Anti Ghostbuster, though. We're not about their line of work. Not at
for
all.
sure. You heard it here first.
Yeah, but these parapsychologists. That's what Dr. Lesh says, I think. They're pretty cool.
Hmm.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah,
Tangina's wrong.
spoil it up.
Tangina's wrong. The house is not clear. You were talking about how the
Yeah,
house
it
gets
isn't.
sucked into itself at the end. Because this wraps back around to what we were talking about earlier. Get back to that for a second. Steve, Craig T. Nelson's character, the dad, has got this boss, Mr. Teague, and like you said, halfway through the movie, it gets revealed that they've been building all this property, all of them on where cemeteries used to be, and then they've moved the cemeteries, right? So there is some confusion here because he says it's not like their tribal burial grounds.
He says it.
It's just people. But I think what we're to understand there is that what he's saying is we don't believe in that shit, right? You and me.
Mm, yeah.
But he could mean that like this is the other graveyard, but he also says like we did this before in 1970 something, and that's where Steve and his family is all living now because they're planning on expanding. They're gonna move another graveyard, or maybe it's the same graveyard and it's being moved twice. Like I'm really confused about this plot point, frankly.
Hmm.
But I do think that
Maybe it's meant to be.
we are to understand that there was a Native American burial site here at some point, and that is what this community is being built on top of. That is what America is built on top of, and what the success of the 80s is built on top of, right? And there's this kind of like you know precognitive vibe in the film that like all of that is going to crumble, that like the sins of the past are going to come home to roost in some way, right?
Right. The whole neighborhood is destroyed nearly. The ground, like,
Mm-hmm.
graves are coming up. I
Left and
mean,
right.
although a lot of them are in caskets, a lot of the things are like they're not Native American. The people in suits.
That's true. It's true. There's people in suits.
It
Yeah,
was weird. A little
a
unclear.
little unclear. Like I'm not sure what to take from, but either way you take it, the ghosts of these bodies are pissed. They don't like that this community is being built on their gravesite, over their bodies. And, I think I'd be pissed too, right? Wouldn't you?
Yeah, yeah.
Can relate to these ghosts.
I can relate.
Uh,
Especially, yeah, if you move the big extra reveal is
right.
that you just moved the headstones, you didn't move the
Yeah, I want
bodies,
to.
so the houses are all buried still on the
We need to
bodies.
talk about this. Craig T. Nelson is screaming his head off at this guy, and it's got to be one of the funniest moments in the entire film for me when he's grabbing James Karen and he's yelling at him. You didn't move the bodies. You only moved the headstones. And it drives me
Just
wild
in
every
case
time.
you didn't know, just in case it wasn't clear.
So that's why the whole shit is going down because of this greedy development company who James Karen, Mr. Teague, is on the board of, and yeah, he fucked everybody by being a cheap bastard. You know, he didn't move the bodies; he only moved the headstones. And then Craig T. Nelson is screaming at him, "Why?" Jesus.
Yeah, that was part of the whole ending of this movie. Like the third act fake out, everybody gets to relax, and so the mom like takes a bath, which I thought was excessive. Like, we see her in her underwear
I don't.
way too much in the
I
finale.
do think so. I don't mind her taking a bath. We get to see her relax, and she's, it's pretty, like what I would call a gentlemanly framing.
Yeah, perhaps,
But later
but
on,
then the ungentlemanly framing
yeah,
of like the monster assaulting her
yeah,
invisibly,
she
it was
gets she gets
insane.
brought up to the ceiling, and she's in her underwear. It reminds me of the ending of Alien, funnily enough, which you see
Yes.
the poster of in this movie, like I said before,
Huh.
where you
Yeah.
have you have to have the girl, vulnerable in a state of undress at the end of the movie.
I hated
I do
that.
want to point out. I noticed even with the 16-year-old girl, Dominique Dunn, who is playing Dana. There's a part where she runs outside in the lightning storm and the wind like blows her skirt up and she has to like pull it down. Did you notice that?
No, but
I was
it was the treatment of her. There's a line that she
uh-huh.
says at the end when they have to like move into a hotel. She's like, "Oh, I remember that place."
Yes.
And the mom like does a double take.
Yeah,
The
it's
only
like
possible interpretation is that she's fooled around there
she's
before.
supposed to be like her archetype,
I hated
and
that.
this is, you know, not the way I would characterize her, obviously, but her archetype is like the teen suburban slut kind of. Like I get that vibe
Yeah,
that this movie is trying to sexualize her a little bit, and I don't think it's
don't
especially for a
approve.
family film. This movie is PG. It's kind of
Yeah,
crazy.
I think if the reason that they were being haunted by poltergeists was because of something that they were doing, like their morals or something, like that would be a reason to include that in your horror movie.
Yeah, but it's
But
mostly
if
played
it's
for a
just because
gag.
of the development, it's just a
It's
gag.
just a gag,
Super
and
inappropriate.
I do think
And it wasn't in the book.
that's
They cut all that weird
that's
stuff out of
good.
the book.
I like that. Uh,
Steven Spielberg in his office is just like, yeah, I don't know what I was thinking.
he wrote it with somebody
Who
else, I
wrote that?
guess, but his name's on the screenplay. In any
Yeah,
case,
even though I would never watch this movie again, and I mean, I did think it was a wild ride, and it was very informative about what people think of ghosts. At least it was definitely a
yeah,
fantasy,
certainly what the
and
tropes were at the time, and what it was bringing to the table.
yeah,
Kind of this fear of technology element going on to, oh, are we watching too much TV? It's about
oh
that.
yeah, yeah. The final moment, the family pushes the TV out.
Hmm.
You
And
know,
when they're in the motel,
that was great. That was I applauded
yeah,
actually
that's a
when the
that's a
credits rolled.
absolute smash ending.
Yeah,
Great final note to go out on, and it's just a long pan away from the hotel while the credits start to roll, uh,
yeah, very very
zooming
good.
out at the same time. And so it's about that a little bit. It's about America and uh, this kind of American fear of the past coming back to haunt them, you know.
Hmm.
And so, especially under Reagan's conservative America, where everything was ostentatious and the economy was booming, all soon to go downhill because we know how that turned out with Reaganomics. And it's also about how sometimes when you look outside your window at night, there's a really scary fucking tree, right? And sometimes,
That got me.
yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes when you're in your room, you're like, why do I have this fucking clown around? Right? This is the
Yeah,
creepiest
sometimes you just
clown.
have your cloud facing you
Isn't
in
that
a rocking
is that
chair
relatable,
across from the bed.
kids? Is
It's
that
not where I put my cloud
that's definitely not where I'd
back
put
when
it
I was a kid.
either. It's
That did make the book. The book did have all the bits with the
That's
clown
good.
because it comes up. It becomes a player in the finale.
Yeah. Does it I guess you didn't get to the finale of the book,
Yeah, right.
but
I really just got the setup. I really just they just did the
I hope it doesn't
they
like
mentioned it.
start like dancing around and talking.
Yeah, that
Already
could be.
when it starts moving later in the movie, I think it actually is less scary, you know. They did a good jump scare with it, but aside from that, him like
Yeah,
wrestling
I
with
agree.
it, it's it's well edited to kind of bring that tension up, but I guess it's just kind of funny at the end of the day to watch a kid wrestle with
Yeah,
a
I
toy
thought the
clown.
the better like the in the end of the first act has a more like when the tree attacks and the whole family becomes muddy. It felt very PG, like end of movie covered in blood. Like
Yeah,
everybody looked wounded and disgusting, even though they just fell in some muddy water.
yeah.
And the kid almost gets eaten by the tree, but then in the next shot he's been saved. But it was still extremely like
I think it covered in so much.
successfully tense.
That's right. I think it was good that the tree was something else, something special. Um,
Yeah, and the tornado.
Tornado's good.
I think the arms of the tree were not successful. They were not as
No, but
scary. I did read that part in the
I
book,
liked
and it
how
was
the
crazy.
tree looked when it was like trying to eat the kid. I thought that was pretty
Yeah,
pretty
that was
cool.
sick.
Um,
Yeah, that was the best part.
I actually do want to stick up for like the animated like ghost hands. I kind of like those, but they don't look real. Uh, there are definitely other effects like when they open the door and all the stuff is whirling around. That looks stupid, super fake. Oh, but there's one effect in this film that's not actually an effect. Do you want to guess what that is, Vernon?
An effect that is not actually an effect. Well, that's interesting. I'm going to take my time on this one. An effect? I have all the time in the
I'm gonna
world.
go ahead and
Not just because I'm a dead ghost.
right.
Oh, you're just going to
I'm
tell
gonna
me?
I'm
All
gonna
right,
go ahead
go
and
ahead.
cut in here. Sorry, but the all the bones that we saw, all those skeletons around the movie,
Yeah.
unfortunately, real bodies, real skeletons that they were using. So
Well,
whenever,
but like they added the clothes and the jewelry. It
oh,
wasn't like,
certainly, but like
these were medical cadavers.
I think about Joe Beth Williams, who played Diane, swimming in that muddy corpse pit
That was
all
epic.
the time, and how like those
All the
are those
time.
are real corpses in there, and
Yeah, I
she's
guess that.
swimming
Yeah, that
around with
is.
them. It's kind of
And then she almost gets out, and she falls back in.
she does. it's a it's a pretty great. I need to get out of this grave and it's raining scene. It was a pool, but all the bodies are coming up into it.
Yeah, I loved the ending.
Hmm.
Except, she was in her underwear.
Aside from that, it was bombastic, just crazy stuff. Some interesting things I learned
Oh,
before we watched this from my live husband. For those of you who are unaware, I have a live husband, and
different from the people we haunt.
yeah.
Separate,
No, he lives
but
elsewhere.
yeah.
We don't have to live together. I'm a ghost. What am I gonna do? But he let me know recently that this movie was going against uh, E.T. at the Oscars, which pretty much took every award it was nominated for from it.
What? Well, you know who's to blame for that? Steven
That's
Spielberg.
right.
He blew it.
Yeah,
He could have directed this. I think he
he
totally,
could have, but I think he was.
tossed it over to somebody
I
else.
think he was busy. Yeah, I gave it to Toby Hooper. The thing is, there are conspiracies, like conspiracy theories. People like to say, "Oh, Steven Spielberg's the one who really directed that movie." I don't.
Oh, about this movie we just
Yeah,
saw?
I don't believe it for a second. First of all, we would have heard something from someone at some point about it. But if anything, he probably helped out with a few shots here and there. But this is definitely Toby Hooper's movie. And
Yeah,
I mean,
I would say that the shot that I highlighted about like the long shots is something that I remember from the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
so you think it
Like some of the most
definitely,
uncomfortable bits of that movie are extended long shots.
so it feels like his style to you then?
Yeah, and that's what you have to get your actors. You have to really work with your actors to coordinate. And the camera was moving around the actors often in these long shots, so
Yeah, I
I
think it's been pretty well debunked, but it is out there, so it's kind of interesting to comment on.
yeah,
Um, I
for sure.
I will say, even though this movie didn't get any Oscars, it did get a BAFTA win. I don't know what it won for.
Which one is that?
Let me take a look here.
The British actor and movie film
Yeah,
British?
it won Best Special Visual Effects at the 1983 BAFTAs. Special effects had a long way to go before the Oscars had a lot of nominees. I think the next year after this, they actually didn't have enough nominees to do the award proper, but they gave an honorary award to Return of the Jedi.
Wow, you know who wrote the novelization for that, don't you?
Yeah, same guy.
Whoever wrote this novelization.
You haven't remembered
I mean, this was his
his
like,
name.
this was the thing that made his name.
Should
He wrote a real book, and then he handed it to Steven Spielberg's producer, and then that person handed it to Steven, and suddenly he's working in the closest quarters possible
Steven
for 2 months.
Spielberg?
I
Pretty
mean,
crazy.
he's crazy,
Yeah.
and he's still alive. This guy, James Caan.
Oh yeah, James Caan.
Good
You
for him.
said. That's so funny.
Yeah, that's
Is it spelled the same?
with a Khan.
Oh no. Then
So no,
I guess
it's not.
the that's James Caan, but I think the other guy is called
James
James
Caan
James
is
Can.
no. Well, it's like a double A.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it's still pronounced Khan.
I'm not sure.
Well, I am.
If you say so. I won't challenge you on it. Do you want to talk about what your favorite shot from the movie is?
Sure. There's this near the ending. There's this big dog kind of monster that appears that I think is implied to be the thing that bites one of the dudes earlier, but he's growling like a
Right. It
lion,
bit Marty.
and
Yeah.
and Diane has a really great, scream like "Leave my family alone," etc.
Right. She's going so hard in
And
that.
that was pretty iconic.
Yeah.
Earlier, there was a shot where Diane's in the kitchen. It's before the chairs get put on the table, and Carol Ann's hand pops up into the frame and grabs her back and scares her. And I really liked that. I thought that was funny because Carol Ann. Is this movie where is Carol Ann the actress who died shortly after this movie?
Oh, geez. Let me look it up.
You don't know?
This
Oh
is
my
one thing that I don't know.
I thought this was a famous thing that she didn't live much longer than this movie.
Heather O'Rourke. Yeah. Let's see here. Um, it looks like she did die. Yes. In 1988 at the age of 12.
Wow.
She did film uh for Poltergeist 2 and Poltergeist 3.
No
Yeah, she's in
way.
those.
That's crazy.
But yeah, she suffered a cardiac arrest. Um it looks like she had Crohn's disease.
Oh man. Well, I'm really sorry to hear that. I thought that was the case. And I thought you were just not reminding me or telling me.
Yeah, no, I this is something I haven't looked into very much. If I had heard it before, it totally left my mind at some point. But yeah, that's crazy. Super sad. She's really, really great in this movie. One
Yeah.
of those kids like the kid in E.T. or the kid in you know, Close Encounters of the Third Kind that is just like lightning in a bottle. I think they call them one take Charlies or something like that.
Nobody's ever said that.
Well, let me look something up real quick.
You should never have let the ghost have a computer.
I'm using my ghostly powers right now. It's really easy. I learned it from Ghost.
I haven't seen that.
I'm using my powers right now. Let's see.
That sounds more like it. Let's see what else do I got. There was mosquitoes at one point. Lots of mosquito sound effects. Those can go.
Carrie. There was a kid named Carrie in Close Encounters of the Third Kind. He was not named Charlie.
One take carry.
Yeah. I don't know if that's what they called him, but they said something like that about him. I saw a special feature for it one time in 1977. I guess what we'll leave off with is this. We talked a little bit about, the scope of the film, kind of the fear that it's touching on, right? Kind of
Yeah.
destruction of the suburban families, place and home, and status, right? They're kind of stripped of their status too. They have to go live in a motel at the end.
Yeah.
But with all this talk of ghosts going to the other side, and they get stuck here when they don't realize they're dead. How do you feel about that? Because
Mm.
I'm kind of the opinion that it's not true for every ghost. Personally,
No, personally.
we know we're dead. We just
E-
haven't made our way to the light yet. I guess.
I
I'm still waiting
guess.
around for it. Frankly.
I could appreciate all of the interpretations of what it's like to be a ghost in this movie.
Yeah,
Like, I felt like there was some genuine attempts,
for sure.
and I liked the research, that was evidently done into parapsychology and psychics. I really enjoyed what they had to say. Like Dr. Lesh, she was speaking right to me, even if I didn't agree with everything, or I'm like, these people don't know what they're talking about. This is just a movie. Nobody really knows what it's like to be a ghost.
For sure. Nobody knows what
But
it's like to be dead.
it did it did like make me think we can all try to understand, and this movie tried to understand.
She says something about how certain ghosts they become so jealous and mean. Uh, they kind of lose their way. I do know a ghost like that personally. His name is Greg, and he is a piece of shit. So I apologize for that. But it's not all ghosts.
I concur.
It's good that you concur.
Well,
Yeah,
I think this went really well.
I think so too.
Either I'm dead or I'm crazy.
Maybe both. Thank you, Vernon, for watching this film. I have recommended to you. Maybe next time I will watch a film that you have recommended to me. Except
I
I
don't know.
think
That's not
we
true.
might have already decided that that's not the
Yeah.
case because we're watching.
We're going to watch another epic child actor horror movie performance
Mhm.
from The Shining.
Yeah, and you have not seen The Shining, correct?
Oh, I've seen The Shining, but it's been a really long time. I
Okay,
was a
okay.
little kid, and now I'm a ghost writer, and so I can't. Oh, a ghost writer. Maybe I could write novelizations.
Well, you've already written so much for Drake.
No.
What we're doing next time is The Shining.
So please join
Yeah, we hope to
us.
see you there. We'll talk about those hotel haunts here in a little while. Stay tuned. And Vernon, you want to sign us out?
Yeah. Oh, peace and love, everybody.
Peace and love.